On today's show, sailing, take me away, ba-da-ba-da-ba. Don't know the rest of the words, it doesn't matter, because we're talking about how to sail around the world. This is a show I've been wanting to bring you for a long time, and I've got some of the best experts out there. They've been doing it for over a decade. We're going to talk all about sailing, estimated costs, the best place in the world to learn how to sail, why sailing is such a great way to travel, the dangers of sailing, how to stay safe. And on the mindset side, we talk about life at sea. How does it affect your mind? How does the process of breaking the cycle of regular daily life, working 9 to 5, and then going out onto a boat for months on end, how does that change you? How do you slow down and get into that moment? How time off traveling can help make you a more productive worker, the social life around sailing. So much great stuff in this show. You're going to love it. And I'm so glad you're here to listen to it. Let's get into it now, shall we? Thanks for being here and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey there, it's Jason with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show, my friend. Thanks for hanging out, spending a little time here with me today, letting me bring a little travel into your ears. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms and to fill your life with as much travel as you desire. Thanks for being part of this worldwide community. And thank you to everybody who's taken the time to write. I want to give a shout out to somebody who is actually two people who are way down south. I'm talking way down south. First, don't forget, if you haven't signed up over at ZeroToTravel.com, join our big community email newsletter there, because you're going to get stuff that you don't get on the podcast. If you want to connect with me and the community a little deeper off the podcast, this is a two-way conversation, and I love to keep it that way. And today's show is packed with incredible information, and it's going to get you geeked up on sailing. And one of the most shocking things that I found doing this interview is how quickly you can learn sailing and how accessible it can be in many ways. And if you've been sailing, you're probably already geeked up on it and you're ready to listen to this show. If you've never been, if you don't have your sea legs yet, then you might want to get them after the show. I'm just warning you, because not only all the stuff that I mentioned at the top of the show is packed into this episode, but there's so much more in this interview with my new friend Brian from svdelos.com. They've been at this for over a decade, and he shares a ton of knowledge in this show, some great stories, tips, resources, all kinds of stuff. You're going to love it, and we're going to slip and slide into it in just a moment. First, I do want to give this shout out to Zach and Leah. They said, first of all, they wrote me an email. I said, first of all, we love your podcast, the way it flows, the topics you cover, and the incredible people you interview truly make our week every week. We've been listening for over 2 years now. You're one of the biggest reasons we quit our jobs, put everything in storage, and hit the road without looking back. Pause to say a quick thank you for the kind words there. And I'm glad that this podcast played some kind of part in helping you get out on the road. Anyway, they go on to say, after traveling the 50 states, they set a new goal to travel to all 7 continents. This proves to be very difficult, since Antarctica is extremely difficult to get to. To overcome this challenge, we applied for a science support contract to work at the bottom of the world. After a 3-month extensive interview process, we were accepted. In October, we made the long trek via New Zealand to McMurdo Station, Antarctica. We've enjoyed our time on this frozen continent. I've learned so much about ourselves, how pushing boundaries through travel changes lives, polar science, and what 6 months in isolation can do to the mind. Zero to Travel really ensured us that people are in fact traveling. It isn't crazy after all to stop everything and experience all this world has to offer. Thank you for your amazing podcast. Keep up the inspiring work. Zach and Leah, thank you. Thank you so much. And you know I love to share stories from the community, because you guys are the reason I do this show, you guys and gals. So if you haven't checked in, you want to share your story, you can always shoot me an email, Jason at ZeroToTravel.com. I read all the emails, and I love to share the stories from the community, because it's not just the guests I have on, but also you out there listening. changing your lives to accommodate more travel or fulfill some travel dreams, whether it's long-term travel, nomad life, or even just one trip. It doesn't matter. If travel's in your bones, if it feels like something you got to do, that's what we're here for. This is a community-powered show. So the more of these stories I can share, I know the more it spreads that ripples of goodness and good vibes. We're wrapping up this business now. We're going to slip and slide into this interview. You're going to love it. Sail away with us, my friends, and I will see you on the other side of this show. Brian.
How are you?
Hey, what's up, my man? How are you doing?
Good, man. Good. Can you see me okay?
Nice to see you. Yeah, and that's a cool T-shirt.
Yeah, thank you. This is my...
It says ahoy, but the O is somebody's face.
It's basically a crazy man. He was a friend that we met in the South Pacific.
Nice.
And he was a guy, one of the first things he told us is, I doubt very much that I will live to be 30 years old.
Wow.
And he was like a day trader, trading the commodities market in Chicago in his 20s. And he got tired of it. He bought like a really cheap sailboat, and he just took off on this hell-bent mission to sail around the world. And he did it in 2.5 years. And then after he was done, he tried to go back to normal life. It didn't really fit into it, and he ended up traveling to India, where he died of typhoid. Fortunately, so all of his friends got together and we funded a documentary about his travels and his life, and this is the shirt we got for that.
Wow, what's that documentary called? We're recording, by the way.
We are. Okay, great.
I was afraid we would miss something, so I just hit record right away, and sure enough,
the documentary is called Chasing Bubbles.
Chasing Bubbles.
It's actually on YouTube for free, I think.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm going to check that out. I have so many questions. This is insane. But I guess we should do a little intro for you so everybody can learn a little bit about you. My guest today, who I'm chatting with right now, planned an 18-month sailing trip back in 2008 that somehow turned into 11 years of sailing around the world with stops in 6 continents and 45 countries, and they are still going, as far as I know. We'll find out how that happened and much more, and you can follow their adventures at SV as in Victor Delos, D-E-L-O-S, D-E-L-O-S, D-E-L-O-S. Yeah, I'm a podcaster. And they have a hugely popular YouTube channel if you want to hop on the boat with them and really see what the lifestyle is like. I encourage you to check it out. Brian Trautman, welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
Thanks, man. Happy to be here.
Awesome to have you here. Now, I was going to say, the guy in the shirt reminds me of, and what was his name?
Alex Ross.
I was in Ushuaia once, down in the southern tip of South America, and I saw a guy sailing, and he looked just like he had like the beard and the salty, and I was just like, that guy's on a real adventure right now. Like I could just see he was in the thick of it. I'm so excited to talk to you because I don't know if you watch like football. Everybody can relate to kind of this analogy, but it's easy to be the armchair quarterback, right? You can be like, oh, that guy should have made the tackle or whatever, you know? And that was me for sailing up until like 2 weeks ago because I'd never done it before. But a buddy of mine texted me and he's like, hey, do you want to go sailing with me in the Oslo Fjord? I live in Norway. And I was like, yeah, I want to go sailing with you in the Oslo Fjord. So, because I'd never gone sailing before. And this is actually before you guys reached out. So, funny enough, I got the email from you guys, I think, like the day after or something. So, it was just like a 2-hour trip and there was barely any wind or anything, but I got to like touch the lines and like wrap things and like move around the boat and get a feel for what sailing is all about. And man, I was pretty instantly hooked. I'm like, this is really cool. And of course there's the aspects of it being wind powered and it's just some of the stuff that goes along with that. I don't know, there's so much to it. So I'm really excited to chat with you. And I wanted to say first, congratulations on the birth of your daughter.
Oh,
you just had a daughter?
Thank you. Exactly. She's 5 weeks old. So that's my first disclaimer is if you hear a baby crying in the background, then that means mommy went to change her diaper or something. But yeah, she's doing well. She's healthy. Her name is Sierra because we wanted to name her something that sort of contrasted the high mountains to the ocean where we normally live. And it also is like, part of the phonetic maritime alphabet, Sierra. And then I can call her like Sia or C, so she's already got all sorts of cool nicknames. So we're stoked. Yeah, we hope to get back to the boat. We're in Sweden right now. Karen was on board up until she was 7 months pregnant. And then we decided to head to Sweden for the birth. And we've been getting used to family life here for the past few months. And then we'll head back and begin sailing with our daughter on board.
Well, shoot, if I knew you were in Sweden, we could have done this during the day a little bit earlier.
It's not a problem, man. Not a problem at all.
Darn. Where in Sweden are you?
I'm on a little island called Gotland, which is off the coast of Sweden. It's about a 3-hour ferry ride from Stockholm.
Okay.
And
man, we could have done it in person.
That would have been even better.
Get a big excuse to go over there and visit you guys.
It's a very cool place, though. It's like a age-old Viking city, big thick walls, and yeah. I like it here. I like it.
Karen's your wife, right?
Yep.
So, because I know your brother's girlfriend. Well, we can get into all this at some point, but maybe it was your wife talking, because I understood what she was saying. Because I speak Norwegian, like, to an extent, and I was like, and they always say, like, you can understand Swedish too, and I'm like, oh my God, I understand some of this. This is crazy, but I don't understand all of it. It sounds like a different language.
Something percent similar. A lot of shared words. Yeah.
Pretty cool. Yeah, that was one of my questions because, well, I have a daughter and a son who's 1 year old. My daughter's 3, but I know you're in the thick of it right now with caretaking. It's a huge life change, huh?
Oh, yeah. I always like to do, when people ask me how it is, I kind of say, like, well, it's sort of like sailing, but instead of being up at night doing watch and changing the sails, we're changing diapers and nursing her, so we're used to the random sleep patterns of this.
Yeah, I guess sometimes you're cleaning poop off the sails too, right? That's
not ideally.
Well,
it has been known to happen.
Yeah, I guess, that from that perspective, you're used to kind of being up at night at certain times and running that cycle. And I was going to ask you how that worked because, well, Sweden, incredible benefits, and you're married, so I assume that you were just able to go there and have the child without having to deal with like insurance issues and things like that, because you're from the States, right?
Yeah, pretty much. When Karen got pregnant, we were sailing in the Caribbean, and we decided to stay on the boat for as long as we can because it is our permanent home. It's our home. We have nowhere else to live, really. And we were able to find doctors as we went through the islands. It was no problem. It was very reasonable cost to do all the ultrasounds and the checkups. The only real problem was when we got to the U.S. And we were not able to see a doctor, unfortunately. And we had already planned to go to Sweden because, like you said, it's excellent health care. It's free. They have a big support system in place, and it's a different methodology as well. And Karen has family here, and we had a place to live, and I love it here. So I basically just got a long stay visa. So normally you get your 3 months. I was able to get 6 months by just telling them, hey, my wife is Swedish, and we're going to go to Sweden and have a baby. And they're like, okay, sweet.
Yeah.
Little ID card and everything.
Doesn't it piss you off, like with your home country, that we're so crappy at this stuff?
Yeah, there's pros and cons to everything, I suppose.
Yeah.
I think care is one of the ones that could be improved.
Huge knock on, I don't know. We're not going to get into a healthcare conversation. So having a child, like we said, is a huge change. And I'm going to save that to the end because I think there's a whole discussion around how much this may or may not change your lives. And we're going to get into, I have a lot of questions around like how to sail around the world and all that good stuff that people want to hear. But I kind of want to start out learning a little bit more about you because this thing, like I said in the intro, it started out as like one big trip and it turned into something way more than that. First of all, where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Flagstaff, Arizona.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. That's a mountain town.
It is. It's not quite as high as Boulder. You're in Boulder, right?
Yeah. No, I'm in Oslo.
Oh, I thought you, okay. Yeah. I thought you, on your thing it said some Boulder, but you're traveling now. Got it.
Yeah. Well, I live here. My wife's Norwegian.
Oh, okay.
We're both married to Scandinavians.
So that previous conversation makes so much more sense. Anyway, I grew up in Flagstaff, Arizona, up in the trees in the mountains. Arizona is a landlocked state. I lived in Tucson, which is also in the desert. And basically, I had this craving and feeling to want to live closer to the water. So I applied for a transfer for my job, which was actually working for the phone company. I was the guy that climbed telephone poles. I got a job up in Seattle. I said, sweet, Seattle is right on the water. Sounds like the place for me. Moved up there, got my degree in electrical engineering from University of Washington, went straight to work out of college to Microsoft, was climbing the corporate ladder.
Yeah, I mean, in Microsoft, not that they're not huge now, but then it was even like more
Yeah,
huge,
and it
right?
was
I mean,
it was like the epitome of, it was like a very prestigious thing at that time. And my manager took me into his office one day and he's like, "Hey Brian," he shut the door and it's like dim lighting and he gives me a drink of whiskey because it's cool to drink at work and everything. And he says, "What do you want to do, Brian? When where are you in 10 years from now?" And I'm like, "Well, I really don't know. I'm like, my mid-20s. I really haven't thought about that so much." He closes the door and he points to the org chart on the back of his door and he says, it starts at Bill Gates and it goes all the way down. There's hundreds of nodes. And he says, my goal is to someday be a node on this org chart. And I'm like, I don't know. I just thought to myself, I was like, man, if that's your goal in life is to be a node on somebody's org chart, then I'm sorry. Like, I basically put in my notice about 2 weeks later.
oh, really? That hit you the way the wrong way from his perspective.
Yeah.
The right way for yours.
Motivational. It turned out to be detrimental to my
I thought you were going to say he closed the door and was like, "Get out while you can, man."
But anyway, myself and a couple of other guys from my team quit at the same time because they were also fed up. We started our own software consulting company, basically reselling stuff to Microsoft, which was sort of a joke. But we ran that for a couple of years, and when the economy crashed for the housing crisis in 2008, I said, "Hey, there's no more work to be done here. I've been wanting to take time off for a long time. I loved sailing. I had a smaller sailboat. And I said, I think I'm going to sell everything I own, house, car, TVs, possessions. I'm going to buy a sailboat and I'm going to leave and clear my head." And I had enough money to do it for 18 months. And that was the plan. I was thinking I wanted to travel, but I wanted to sail. And it turns out if you can sail your house around from country to country,
You don't ever need to find accommodations, right?
exactly. And you get to keep all your toys with you, all your creature comforts, your books, your computers, and it's all there. And because everything is connected, so many countries are connected to the ocean, the world is literally at your fingertips. And so we started sailing. My brother joined in Mexico a few months into the trip. We took off across the South Pacific. We ended up in really New Zealand. It was 15 months later, something like that. And that's where I met my wife, Karen. She was actually going to school in Australia.
Okay, so you met her on the original sort of trip that you planned. Okay, yeah.
I met her and at a party, and I asked her to come sailing for the weekend. I was like, "Hey, I got a sailboat.
Take me away."
Exactly.
all the cliches from all the songs, right?
Exactly. And then she ended up missing her flight back, and it was awesome.
And it was awesome, and it still is awesome. Now you guys have a child together.
Yeah. But we were in the cycle of sailing, running out of money, doing odd jobs and odd work. My brother was managing a Mexican restaurant, and I was, we were living off my credit card, so I had to get a consulting job writing code again from Australia. And, we just kept on doing this thing: work, make money, sail, run out, work, make money, sail, run out. And eventually we started making these videos based on feedback from somebody who was reading our blog, because we did have a blog at that time. It was just pictures and stories for our friends and family. But this other sailor came up to us and was like, "Guys, the stuff that you're putting up is pretty cool. What would you think about documenting your lifestyle through videos instead of blogs?" And we said, "Well, Google, here we come. How do I make a video?" And we bought a cheap little camcorder and we started making these basically home movies, right? And people started watching them, and we started getting emails from people, and people were subscribing to the channel. And we were a little bit taken aback at first. We're like, "Well, why in the hell are people interested in this? What's going on here?" And then I read somewhere that you could make money on videos on YouTube. So I enabled monetization, and we made $1. And I was thinking oh, wow, we've made $1. that's pretty great. Now maybe we can try and make $30. So we made a few more videos, and then we were making like $30 a month. And I was like, well, okay, if we can make $300, then we at least have enough to pay for our beer. So that was our goal. And that went on for a little while, and our audience was growing organically during that time. And then we got an email from one of the people watching our videos about a crowdfunding platform named Patreon. And are you familiar with that at all?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know what it is. It's basically like Kickstarter, but it's for ongoing projects. We created an account there. He said if we created an account, he would be the first person to sign up and pledge to us. And now that is actually what funds most of our travel sustainably.
Yeah. That's crazy. I want to get into some of that, but I'm going to have to rewind because after you decided you didn't want to be the node, you're like,
right.
The node with the Ghostbusters symbol. I'm just imagining crossing it out. You know, at that point in the story, I always feel like a lot of people are like, well, then I took off to travel, but you took off and just started another company.
Well,
what kind of software were you building? Like, what was the actual product that you made?
Well, it was to do with software development lifecycle stuff. So helping other people write code by managing work items. And it's really, after I did that, I decided I never again want to do something where I have to convince them that they need to buy whatever I'm working on. I want to do something that's fun and sells itself.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
And you're doing that.
Well, I basically I want to do something I love, and if I love to do it, then it doesn't matter. Like it's all good either way.
Well, I think there's really something to that intention, right? Because that was a specific intention you have, and that's where you guys are at now. And I don't feel like you arrive in those places unless you really set an intention towards them.
No, absolutely agree. Because if you set an intention towards something, then you are by default changing the energy and the aura around you that's going to attract more of what you want in your life, right? And so that's I think they made a movie about it called The Secret or something like that.
Yeah, but that's kind of because it takes work too. You know, you can't just think about it. But I mean, the way I see it is the intention kind of it's that, but it's also it informs your decisions along the way, right? You're like, oh, this particular business idea or this thing doesn't fit into the box of what I actually want, or it's not really a box, but you know, it's not in the direction of what I want. So I'm just going to cast this one to the side. I mean, I feel like it makes decision making a lot easier when it comes to kind of figuring out your life on the road, because that's essentially what you guys were doing. And I think a lot of travelers can relate to that, whether you're sailing, backpacking, living in an RV, whatever. If you're working the odd jobs and you're trying to figure out like the next thing you're going to do to keep traveling, I think it's good to have an intention. And of course, the way you guys are doing it and sharing, I think it's of course inspiring other people, which is a beautiful thing.
It also gives you a purpose as well.
Right.
And so like
how long can you stare at the ocean without
I the first 6 months out, I felt incredibly uncomfortable because my whole life was so structured up to that point. You know, it's divided in 50-minute chunks. And then all of a sudden I had this entire day, entire weeks, entire months, and I felt guilty. You know, I felt like, what should I be doing right now? And I busied myself doing a lot of things. It took me a while just to realize that it's okay to appreciate the time that you have and to enjoy it. And when I did come back to work after having those, you know, almost 3 years off, I found that I was much more productive in a less amount of time, right? Because my head was clear. I didn't have all this noise around, and I was just able to focus and, you know, get in and get out, and then it was time to play.
What were some of the things that, I know this is really hard to answer because everybody's mind works in a different way, but during that stretch, like how did you shed the guilt? I think this is a common problem with people coming from the Western mindset, and then all of a sudden you get on the road and you have all this time and you just feel antsy. I remember I went on a trip once with a colleague of mine. I was more in like travel mode then, but he was in work mode, and he was making to-do lists on the beach, and I'm like, what are you making a to-do list for? We don't have anything to do. We can do whatever the hell we want right now. Like, you know, but it was like that. He was in that mindset, and I get that too. You know, I think we've all been there. So do you have any tips around kind of shedding that guilt and just figuring out how to slow down?
I don't know that my tips are very valid. I can only speak from my experience. But what I did, and basically this stems from owning a boat, which is a lot of work, is I poured myself into working on the boat and creating a lot of hobbies for myself. So, initially when all the boat work was done, like imagine, you clean your house and like now it's done, and then you go out and you go running or hiking. I would go scuba diving, and I would go like, snorkeling, and then I would go surfing, and then I would go paddleboarding, and then I would just do all of these things. And then it became to a point where I was like, well, now I'm just going to sit around and read. And, that's maybe, I think, the best part about being at sea is because you're actually forced to do nothing, because you're on a boat in the middle of the ocean. Land is 1,000 miles away. There's no internet. There's no connectivity. The only people that you can talk to are those that are with you, your crew. And now I can sit for hours and, stare at a cloud, start on the horizon, and then rise over the horizon and pass over my head, or just look at the waves, or listen to music for a bit and then read a bit, and
and be relaxed and not feel guilty.
Yeah, it's great.
I think in this day and age, it's harder than ever to get to that point.
Yeah, I think in modern society now, and it's really a brutal realization when we come into port, after we're at sea for like 15 or 20 days. The first thing you want to do is, of course, you want to get off the boat. You want to go into the local bar, meet some people, and have a couple drinks. You go in there and everybody's on their phones. I'm like, well, what's the point of you coming to the bar if everybody's going to sit there and ignore each other? I don't know.
Yeah, and you're so disconnected that I think your awareness around that is probably heightened because,
no
you
doubt.
said, you're coming off of staring at clouds for hours, and I mean, which sounds like pretty much like paradise right now.
It's pretty good. I highly recommend it.
Yeah. So that's a whole other element to this, I think, because travel can change you in so many ways, but this kind of travel is each style of travel has its own unique things, and it's going to affect each person as an individual. But I mean, it sounds like with sailing in the way that you guys are, when you're backpacking or something, I mean, there's a lot of different, you can do it a lot of different ways, but you're kind of in the thick of everything. But with you guys, like when you're out at sea, you're just, like you said, you don't have connectivity. You're forced to kind of sit in these spaces with yourself.
Yeah. And you're totally self-sufficient as well. So, we're responsible for making our own water on board with the desalination plant. We make our own electricity with solar and wind. We have enough food and provisions. We're fishing, of course. We have food for 3 to 6 months. So it's nice to know that you can be situated somewhere and survive for a long time. That gives you, it gives you a good amount of peace, I think. You could end up anywhere and be okay, right? It doesn't matter.
I'm sure in the beginning it gave you some stress, or maybe not, but just, what's going to break? Is this going to work? What if the water thing breaks? I mean, what do you do?
Well, you fix it or you don't. And if you don't fix it, then you work around the problem. Like when we were sailing from, where was it? Mexico to French Polynesia, to the Marquesas. From the swinging of the stove, it cracked the propane hose. So all of a sudden, our ability to cook just evaporated in a cloud of gas. But I rummaged around the boat. I found out that the hose on our dive compressor is the exact same type of hose, the exact same type of thread. So I took the dive compressor apart, got the stove working, right? That was a lot of fun that day. I mean, it was stressful at first, but yeah, and I get a lot of satisfaction from that.
MacGyver style.
Yeah, I love doing that.
It's a good feeling. Everybody loves really doing that, right? Where you just kind of rig something up. You're like, all right, this is going to work. Is it going to hold? Is it going to hold? Moments of tension. Then yes, we can have a hot meal.
And baling wire.
Well, when I was on tour, we used to say, if you can't duck it, fuck it. That was our sort of ongoing saying. You need duct tape for everything.
There's also one more thing. Is one time in the South Pacific, we had a pretty big, like our water maker sprung a leak, and it sprayed the water right into all of our battery chargers. So we had like the water maker broken, and then we had no electricity for a while. We had a dark boat, and it was one of the most amazing times because we would naturally live with the sunrise and the sunset. To get water, we would go to shore on some island and end up meeting some, local crazy native guy in a hut that we wouldn't have normally met if we weren't on this mission to get water. And yeah, we turned it into, it could have easily ended the trip for that season, but it turned out to be like one of the things that I look back on the most fondly.
Is this seasonal for you guys? Do you guys do this 365 days a year? Obviously, you're stopping on land and staying in places and things like that. You're not on the boat all the time, but do you go back to Sweden?
We're on the boat all the time.
Oh, you are? You are in the boat all the time?
Yeah. I mean, the only reason we're here is for the baby.
Right. Okay.
But, I mean, it is seasonal in the sense that we like to avoid cyclones and hurricanes. And so, yeah. So we know where it's no surprise what the hurricane season is in the Caribbean. It's no surprise where it is in the South Pacific, the Indian Ocean. So we'll make our long-term planning around being out of these areas when there is the hurricane season. And we can move north or south because the seasons, the different hemispheres have different seasons. So if it's turning into a cyclone season up north, we can sail south and be in winter again.
You moved to Seattle to be near the water, but there are a lot of water sports and there's a lot of ways to travel. I mean, you didn't have to go sailing. Why sailing?
I think a lot of it had to do with the self-sufficiency of sailing. It's just such a thing where you're responsible for your own mistakes. Anything that happens out there is your fault. It's one of those things where the ocean doesn't really care about your experience or how old you are or your sex or the color of your skin. It treats everybody the same. I find that quite fascinating. There's no excuses either, right? If something goes wrong and you're the skipper, well, you should have thought of that. So it's sort of trial by fire in that aspect. It's very exciting, though.
Yeah, and humbling, right?
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
You have a constant reminder right in front of you of how small we really are, but in a good way, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I have gotten pretty seasick before. It's one of the worst feelings in the world. It's terrible. Is that something you ever battled? Like, I'm just curious because if there are people out there listening that have gotten seasick before, I mean, are you just somebody that gets seasick or you don't? Or is it something you can get over and get your sea legs, as they say? I'm just curious because there might be some people listening now. They're like, I want to sail around the world, but I get totally seasick. So I can't do it, but I would love to do it,
Well, first of all, it is a real thing.
Yeah, it's
there
awful.
Are some people, it literally will make you wish that you were dead. It just destroys you. There are people who are more prone to it than others. I myself, I've never been seasick, but I've had quite a few people that have been sick on the boat that have sailed with us as crew. And typically it lasts about 3, maybe 4 days, which is what they call getting your sea legs. And then after that, you're usually pretty good.
Really?
Yeah.
For the rest of your life or just for that time?
No, just for that time.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, I thought it was like, getting the chicken pox or something. You get it once and then you never get it again.
I'm sure you do get more acclimated to it. But I mean, we've had people that have sailed with us for 6 or 9 months. And every time you go on a sail, they get sick for, 3 days or something.
And they still come, even though they know they're going to deal with that for 3 days. Ugh. You can only take so much Dramamine, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Well, how did you get started with it? Because you're a young guy coming from Flagstaff, so there was no sailing experience there, as we mentioned. And I was curious about this myself because having just gone sailing, I thought, well, this would be really cool, and I probably could get my buddy to show me the ropes, as they say. But I love that you can use that expression literally in this case. Literally. It's always really fun. Like, if you were giving somebody advice on getting started sailing, what would the advice be that you would give?
Well, I think the first thing is sailing small boats will teach you way quickly than a big boat. So I'm a big fan of dinghy sailing, and a dinghy is a small boat. Maybe it's 6 or 9 feet, but yeah, like super small. you will feel and learn more about the interaction of the wind and the boat and the waves than you will on a big boat.
Because of the principles, it's just so reactive to every little thing. Is that?
It is. It's reactive. You can feel every gust of wind. And also the stakes are much lower. So you can knock one of those boats over, you can roll it over, and yes, you get wet, but then you turn it back over and you keep on going. Like if we were to roll Delos over a 53-foot, 22-ton boat, like that's a big deal. That would be a real problem. No. So that's the number one thing. And there's dinghy clubs everywhere. Like when I started, there was a place in Seattle called the Center for Wooden Boats. You could go out in an afternoon, like most universities or colleges have them too. It's a couple bucks. You join the club and then you can rent a boat. You get an instructor. That's awesome.
Can you tell me about the first day you went?
Oh, man. Yeah. It was in a tiny little wooden, I don't even remember what kind of boat it was. It was so long ago. Wooden mast. Went out with, I think it was big enough for 3 people, myself, my girlfriend at the time, and the instructor. We went out and basically it scared the shit out of me so much that about within 2 weeks of that, I went out and I looked on boattraderonline.com. I'm not even sure if it still exists. I found a sailboat that was very close to me. It happened to be a 22-foot Catalina. It was like $2,500, I think. I just bought it. I was like, that's cool. Now I need a boat that I can go do this on my own.
Wait, even though you were totally petrified, that made you want to go buy a boat?
Yeah, I was petrified and thrilled. It was cool.
Okay, yeah. You were getting this sort of rush with the fear being a good thing, kind of chasing the fear a little bit?
I just saw it as an incredible challenge. It just became something that I wanted to learn really badly. And I did all sorts of stupid things in that boat. Like I ran it aground, I got the keel stuck on things, I'd run it into mud banks, like it drifted away at night because I didn't set the anchor properly. But that's exactly the kind of mistakes you want to make in a $2,500 boat, right? Not a much more expensive.
Right. Livable. I mean, unless you set the anchor improperly and, a cargo ship runs you over in the middle of the night or something.
Yeah, which you generally try to avoid.
You made those mistakes, but they weren't life-threatening, it sounds like.
No, they were just like the sheriff would call you in the morning and be like, "Sir, do you know where your boat is?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's anchored out in the bay there." And he's like, "No, sir, your boat is a navigational hazard." What the heck is a navigational hazard? So let's float in the middle of Lake Washington. You need to go get it. Like, oh, geez. Float it away.
That's great.
So you learn from that sort of stuff. Right?
Yeah. Any new venture, you're going to have your mishaps. And I mean, even with all the experience, I'm sure it sounds like you still have your mishaps along the way. That's just part of adventuring.
Part of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how long, we're getting into the how to sail around the world segment, if you want to call it that, because I have a lot of sort of logistical questions around this. How long do you think it takes somebody to learn how to sail? And I know it's like amount of hours and time on the water and everything like that, but if kind of a rough estimate on what you think it would take for somebody to learn how to sail well enough that they could take a trip, like a far trip, not just not like not go around the world. All right, I can go around the world now, but maybe sail from, I don't know, to the San Juan Islands from Seattle or something like that.
Oh man, I think you're probably talking like days.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like you can go to the Caribbean, you can get a ASA sailing course that'll qualify you to charter your own boat in like a week or something like that. Yeah.
They teach you everything in a week, and then they'll give you a boat and just let you take it?
Yeah.
No
you get
kidding.
A written test. You get
How much is something like that? Is that kind of... All right, here's a question, because I know in diving, for example, one of the cheapest places to do it is in Honduras, and a lot of people go there so they can get certified, and there's a good diving there, apparently, stuff like that. Is there a place like that for sailing where it's cheap and beautiful here, and you can go do it in a week? All right, give it to us.
Grenada.
Okay,
Grenada.
That's the spot?
It's a great spot. Beautiful. You can sail from Grenada up into the Grenadines. Tobago Keys, fantastic sailing, always windy, beautiful anchorages, nice beaches. I think there's like for a 7-day course, it's like $3,500. Keep in mind this is including your accommodation and your food, so it's including room and board as well, right, on the boat.
And you
So
get some kind of certification that's internationally recognized. Is that?
Yeah. So, well, there's two kinds. There's the the ASA courses, which is the American Sailing Association, and then there's the Royal Yacht Master stuff. And the Royal Yacht Master is more for, if you're gonna become a delivery skipper, or you want to be trusted with other people's boats, or you want it for insurance to cross an ocean. But if you want to go charter in the Caribbean, the ASA courses are great. It's great. Yeah, they totally accept that. LTD Sailing is a great one. They're our friends in Grenada, run by Chris and Crystal. It's called Living the Dream Sailing, LTD.
Okay, that's cool. All right, so you go down there, you spend $3,500 in a week, and then you can get this ASA certification. And how long is that good for?
I believe it's a lifetime. I really don't know, but I've never heard of any expiration on it.
But you don't need to have something like that to sail around the world, or do you? I don't know how any of that works. Do you need like a driver's license? I'm using air quotes.
The answer is it depends on where you're from.
Okay.
So as
That's
a U.S.
weird.
citizen with a U.S. flag boat, there's nothing required.
Okay.
So I just basically hopped on and left.
That just seems crazy. That seems crazy that there's no sort of international kind of rule, right?
And the most interesting thing is that, so I'm a U.S. citizen, U.S. flag boat, can pretty much do whatever the hell I want. If I was South African or lived in Australia or New Zealand, then you would have to have a license that they approve of before they'll let you off of coastal waters.
So basically, if any other nationalities see an American boat coming towards them, they're like, "Get out of the way!"
Depends, maybe. But the other interesting thing is, as a U.S. flag boat, no foreign country can enforce their rules on you. And so we can, I can't sail into South Africa, and they can't prevent me from leaving because I don't have a sailing license, because they have no control over me or my boat.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Okay.
So it's the Wild West out there.
Interesting. All right. So that what I say would be the ultimate hack if you want to learn fast. You go and just do it for a week straight and just freaking learn it. Don't I guess if you live near the water, you could take lessons and just kind of do it in your free time, which is something I could do here, being based in Oslo.
Yeah, absolutely.
But going to Grenada and doing it in a week sounds more fun. So then you can take a boat and we'll use that as an example. I know there's a lot of places around the world, but to charter a boat and to rent a boat for, I don't know, a week and go sailing or whatever, what does it typically cost?
Oh man, I don't have an answer to that. I do know that, these boats have 3 or 4 cabins, right? And each cabin can fit 2 people.
Oh, okay.
So that's why it's such a popular thing, because, let's say it's I don't know, $5 or $6 grand for the week or whatever. You split that up for, between 6 or 8 people or something.
Yeah.
And it becomes very reasonable.
And you got your place to stay, and then you got all your food just by throwing in your fishing line, I guess.
Exactly. And then you cruise around from cool spot to cool spot, and there you go. Dude,
bring your boat to Oslo sometime, please. I want to come on and do another one of these on the boat. All right. So, because I'm getting geeked on sailing right now. If you're listening to this, you might be sitting up a little higher in your seat right now too. All right, this sounds cool. Because it sounds much more feasible than I thought. Because when I asked you how long it would take to learn, you're like, oh man. And I was like, oh, here it comes in 6 months, 10 months, a week. Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's of course, this is sailing in the Caribbean. You wouldn't want to go sail around the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa with a week experience.
That would be
a terrible idea.
Foolish.
That being said, my friend Alex, I was talking about on Bubbles and his crazy boat. I don't think he did anything. I think he just bought the boat and then just took off.
That's nuts.
Yeah, it's nuts.
So, all right, well, let's talk about it from a planning perspective then, because let's say you're that person that's just starting out and you have a little bit of experience. Sounds like the Caribbean's a nice area to get your feet wet, so to speak. How would you plan a trip around the world. Like if you were talking to somebody like, all right, you're talking to me. This is me. All right, let's say I'm going to go to Grenada. I'm going to spend a week and I'm going to learn how to do this. Now I have this dream. I want to sail around the world like you guys are. What are the next steps? Like, should I get a certain amount of experience in one area? Is there a way to plan where you can kind of always stay in these mellow areas and ramp up experience? And like, how much experience do you think you need until you go to like more difficult areas? I don't even know where the more difficult areas are. This is like a multi-layered question, which is terrible because you're not supposed to ask these, but I'm doing it anyway.
I think I can take it. Well, the interesting thing is there's no right or wrong answer to that. It depends on how you feel, the capabilities of you, your boat, and your crew. There are definitely more dangerous areas to sail, but there's also predefined routes. And the most popular route for getting around the world is called the Coconut Milk Run.
Coconut Milk Run?
The Coconut Milk Run, because
it's just a cool
you never
name.
sail further north to where the coconuts stop growing. You never sail further south to where the coconuts stop growing. You stick to the middle. You keep the wind behind you. You keep the currents behind you, and you just go west, right? And that's the easy way to get around the world. There's actually a book called World Cruising Routes, written by Jimmy Cornell, and in there, or is it Nigel Calder? Now I can't remember. Well, I know the title is World Cruising Routes. It basically lists every route in the world, the best season to go, to have the most optimal wind and currents with you, waypoints you should go to along the way. It's like a traveling guide for a road trip, except it's on the ocean, right? And there's no rest stops. So you really just try to keep the wind behind you because that's the most comfortable, easiest way to sail. And I really don't think it's that difficult. Of course, there's things that you should be aware of, that you need to watch out for and be alert for. But if you plan your weather, which is now possible because weather forecasting is extremely good. So anybody who just happens to run into a storm randomly means they probably weren't paying attention to the weather, right? That's, you can get 3 and 5 day forecasts. And if you time your sailing with the seasons, then the chances of you being in a revolving tropical storm like a cyclone or a hurricane are like minimal.
Yeah. Do you have an engine where you can get out if, say, like a storm all of a sudden?
We do have an engine. She's diesel powered, 68 horsepower. So it's a low horsepower, but it's very high torque. Incredibly fuel efficient, and she gives us a range of about 1,000 nautical miles. It's like 1,800 kilometers, I think.
Okay.
Something like that.
I didn't think horses could run that fast on the water.
6
I think
knots.
it's
So.
funny that we still use horsepower. Like,
Yeah. Horsepower, and we use knots and feet in boats.
Yeah, got it. Horsepower is the best metric out there, though.
Yeah, right. 68 horses pulling through the water.
Wow, 68 horses pulling you through the water on your chariot.
I think I missed a bunch of layers to your question. I'm sorry.
No, that was good. Because I was going to ask you for resources, and of course, you gave us some great ones, and I like the idea of the Coconut Milk Run. I'm going to look that up, and this World Cruising Route
actually,
sounds like a good
on
resource.
if you go to, if you just type into Google like SV Delos required reading, and on our website there's a section called Practical Sailing Books, and just about every book that I've talked to you about is a link on there where you could buy it on Amazon or whatever. But there's guides, there's handbooks on telling you. Another great book, if you want to start somewhere, is called The Complete Sailor. That one teaches you the basics of the basics, starting from knots and how to trim your sails, because that stuff can be quite technical, right? Like how to get the most out of your boats. Yeah.
How long did it take you to get comfortable where you weren't nervous going out on the water?
Never. I'm still nervous every
Really?
time. Yeah. Every passage we leave on, I still get a little bit of butterflies in my stomach.
It's not something to take lightly, for sure. It's
No, and I'm not really scared of the ocean, but I'm very respectful because I've seen the power that the ocean can have. And I think if you stop being at least having that respect, then you're getting sort of cocky, and that's when we're going to get knocked around.
How does it work when you want to visit a place and you're getting into port? I mean, do you have to call ahead and reserve a parking space? You're going to popular ports. I mean, how does that all work?
Well, it also depends on countries. Some countries are super easy. Some are not. Coming into Australia, you need to do an advance notice of arrival. So you need to tell them at least 3 days before you're going to get there, which means if you have a satellite phone, you email them. You email the government when you're at sea with your passport details and all that. Some countries like the US, you just basically rock up. Most countries are like that. Brazil, South Africa, all through the Caribbean.
And you never go through immigration or anything?
No, you do. You do exactly the same thing that you do when you arrive from the plane. You still clear immigration. You still clear customs. Sometimes there's an additional step of quarantine or health control. The difference is it's not organized for you. So you have to go find the office. You have to look up the rules in advance. Some places it's a huge adventure. Like when we went to India, it took us 3 days to clear them because we had to get inspected by the Navy, by the local military outposts, and the police, and the health inspector.
What do you mean, to make sure you're not drug smuggling or something?
Yeah, I mean, they satellite phones are illegal there, so they took our satellite phone away, and they're checking you for weapons, and it's just a very bureaucratic country. Whereas you go into Thailand or Malaysia, and you fill in your details on a computer, and it takes 15 minutes. Like all the, in the Caribbean, that's how most islands are. All the French islands, you never talk to anybody. You go into a coffee shop, you sit down at one of their terminals, 5 minutes and like €7 later, you're done.
Okay. And you just park your boat in this area and leave it there, and you have to pay a fee? Is that how that works?
We try not to go into marinas because marinas are expensive, and we like to live out on the hook, as we call it, out on the anchor. So we always try and find an anchorage that's comfortable and protected where we can swim, where we can take the dinghy and explore. If you get into a marina that you're at the dock and you're plugged into power, and it's convenient, and we do it sometimes if we have to do a lot of shopping or if we're picking people up. But I'd say more than 90% of the time we just drop the anchor somewhere.
You boondock.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's the RV term, but you're doing it with
common practice.
What did you call it? What's the sailing term?
It's living on the hook, setting the hook.
Living on the hook. Okay, so you just have to park close enough, obviously in a place where the boat is sheltered and safe, but also so you can swim in or take a dinghy. Do you have a dinghy with you? Is that? Yeah.
I mean, we have a dinghy. It's pretty badass, actually. It's got a 25 horsepower engine on it. We can wakeboard and pull tubes around with it. Some people have smaller ones, but on the dinghy is your car when you're cruising. And so you don't want to be not able to go to land or go shopping because the wind is blowing 20 knots. You want to be able to get there. And so we invested in a good dinghy, and it's well worth it.
Okay. And then you just park that thing on the pull up on the beach and just I'm just going to leave my dinghy here going to land.
Depends. In some places we do that. In some places there's a little dock, restaurants and bars love sailors because
they get
like
business.
to drink and they get business. So in the Caribbean, they often have docks where you can pull up and, you can lock your dinghy up, or you can take your chances and leave it. Some places it's totally safe to leave your dinghy. Nobody would ever mess with it. In some places you give a kid $1 to watch it for the day.
Okay.
All over the place.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about safety because if you're coming on land and you're just leaving your boat somewhere, is that dangerous? There must be sometimes when you guys spend nights in hotels on land because you want to hang out and do different things.
Yeah, very rarely.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, very rarely.
Always living off the hook or on the hook?
Always living on the hook.
On the hook. Yeah, not off the hook. And off the hook. Off the hook in the clubs, on the hook at the... No.
It is similar to if you were to go into a city, you wouldn't park your car in a terrible neighborhood where you'd be afraid to leave it for fear that it would be broken into and stolen.
Right, but that I can kind of look around and make a judgment call, but you're just looking at the ocean, right?
You can get a vibe for a place pretty quickly by the way people are looking at you when you come in. If there's other boats around, what you've heard about the place,
Yeah. Okay.
where you are. Places get a reputation.
I'm sure there's a lot of chatter amongst the sailors, like where to go, where not to go.
Hugely. There's Facebook groups, there's message boards, there's informal messages sent by email. We've been boarded 3 times at night, which is basically like a home invasion.
Really?
Once in
3
the Solomon
times?
Islands.
Quite a lot.
Over the course of 10 years.
All right, let's hear it. What happened?
And I got robbed more in my office in Seattle in like 3 years.
Really?
Yeah, crazy. But yeah, first time in Solomon's, we were sitting there. I woke up 3:34 in the morning, see somebody outside on the deck of the boat trying to pull open our lockers and steal a bunch of dive gear. I woke up, yelled at the guy, and they, of course, had taken their small boat from land, which was just a little canoe, oared boat. The boat next to us actually saw it happen. They were a bigger boat and were doing night watches. And so they jumped into their dinghy. They chased these guys down, ended up beating them up pretty badly, and then getting all of our gear back. We had been warned in that place, though, is the thing. We had been told that we should be doing night watches. And we had never had any problems. We had always left all of our doors and windows open because we didn't believe, this is the islands. What's going to happen here? Well, this port had a reputation. We didn't listen to it. We got robbed that night. It also happened to us in Indonesia. Sort of the same situation. Although we didn't really have any information about that part. But when we went in there, we just felt a bad vibe. We didn't feel really comfortable about it. We wanted to leave, but we were expecting another crew to come in from the air via flight. And so we had to wait that night. And it always happens on the second night, because the first night, you roll in, you get scoped out by people. They watch you the next day. They see how many people are on the boat, how many male, how many female, are they older people, are they younger people? And then that's the night that they usually get you. So every time we've been hit, it's been like the second night that we've been in a place. All the other times where we've actually done night watches, we sit outside with a big light. We don't have any guns or firearms or weapons, but there's a lot of things on the boat to deter people. We have flare guns, we have fire extinguishers, we have spear guns. We have big machetes and knives we use for chopping down, banana stalks and stuff. But really the most effective thing we've used is a big spotlight. Anytime somebody comes close to the boat, we just stand up and we just blast them with the light. They know that you're up, you're aware, you're not an easy target, you're doing watch, and they always just go away.
Really?
Yeah.
And that's pretty common? Like somebody has to stay up all night and stand guard while you're in these places?
We've probably done it less than a dozen times.
Oh, okay. So it's only in certain places where you're you hear kind of word on the street, but you need to do night watch here.
We've had locals come up to us, knock on the boat and say okay, guys, it's okay for you to be here during the day, but whatever you do, don't stay here at night. I can guarantee you people will come and steal from you. And so you just leave. In Brazil, we were in Brazil for 6 months, and Brazil can be a quite scary place to sail. We had zero problems because we got so much good advice. People said, go here, do not go here. If you go into Rio, anchor in front of this beach, go and talk to this guy, tell him who you are and why you're there. And he's like the local guy who will protect your boat as a guest, right? And so that's actually quite cool. He's like the beach king, and nobody will mess with your boat if you're his buddy. It's all about learning these little nuances of how to not be a target.
Yeah, and a lot of that stuff you can't prepare from. You kind of learn on the way, right? And I'm sure you're developing relationships, and like you said, there's Facebook groups.
I'm just listening to local advice.
Yeah. Well, the king of the beach, and I'm sure you meet a lot of characters along the way. I was watching one of your videos where you met this woman, Lisa, who had been 81 days at sea. She hadn't talked to anybody. Yeah. She was doing
just
something for climate change.
Ocean.
Yeah.
Yep.
These people, not just the people on the water, but obviously in the port. But what is the sailing community like? Like the people you're meeting within that community? I'm sure even though the world is large, you must cross paths with some of the same people or become friends with other people that are doing this thing because they're seasonal or they're going to certain places at certain times a year. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's sort of like a graduating class, right? If you leave Mexico in March, everybody ends up in Tahiti by, Christmas, and you have a hell of a party together. And then everybody's trying to escape the same cyclone season. So everybody ends up in, Fiji or Tonga or New Zealand at the same time, and you recognize people. And so that's quite cool. The scene is varied. I mean, you get everybody out there from, we ran into two crazy Frenchmen that were probably like 23, 24 years old in like a 22-foot boat crossing an ocean in this tiny little boat where when the boat leaned over, whatever bunk was on the downwind side was always underwater. And so one guy always had to sleep underwater. And then, that's one extreme. And then the other is you meet this couple on like, a gigantic like 60 or 70 foot power boat. And they're like, in their 60s or 70s and they're retired and they're obviously millionaires, but they're still very cool. And they still have like, everybody out there has the same sort of view on life. And it doesn't really matter if you're a millionaire or have this tiny little boat. Like everybody anchors in the same sand. You're still living the same life. Everybody gets together for beach, for barbecue or drinks on the beach. Sundowners come on over. You have people of all levels of education. There's a lot of retired airline pilots. There's doctors. There's engineers. There's teachers. There's musicians. It's just all these interesting people from all walks of life that all have a common interest of traveling and sailing. And you get them all together, and it usually turns into a pretty good party.
It sounds like a great community, and then of course you're meeting people in other countries that you visit, like any traveler is. But I was curious about the social aspect of the sailing community because that's unique to what you guys are doing. And you have crew come on, it sounds like how many people does it take to crew your boat, and how do you find them, and what's that experience like bringing people on the boat?
Well, we can sail the boat with two people. Is easy.
It's 52 foot, you said?
53 feet.
Okay.
So pretty close. But the deal is when you're doing long sails, the reason why having more people is good is twofold. The first thing is sleep. So, when you're out sailing, there's no place to stop. There's no anchorages. You don't just drop the sails and sit there. You're moving 24/7 until you arrive at your next destination. And so people who sail alone, they often sleep in these small sporadic spurts. They might sleep for 15 minutes or 1 hour or 2 hours and get up and check something. They might have a radar alarm set to look out for other ships, or AIS, which is a automatic identification system. It's like a transponder for sailboats. So that's one way. If you have two people, we do it with 3 hours on, 3 hours off. So you're on watch for 3 hours, you sleep for 3 hours, you go back on watch, so and so. With three people, now you're on watch for 3 hours, you get 6 hours off. 4 people, you get 9 hours off. And so, if you want to have chill time and be able to relax and have a lot of leisure time, then I think having 4 people is great. And so we usually sail with 4 to 6 people.
And where do you find them? From your community or?
All over the place. Like one time in South Africa, we did we put up a video on YouTube. I want to be a Delos pirate. And we asked people to send in short 2-minute videos about, why they would be the best crew on the boat. And we got videos from, hundreds of people from all over the world about, just them doing funny stuff, sailing skits or whatever. Because you're just trying to get a vibe. Because it's not really important if the people know anything about sailing, because that can be taught. But what is important is their openness to learning and adventure and how they're going to interact with the other people on the crew. Because if you have a bad emotional situation on the boat, that can turn into a disaster. It's bad for morale. It can hurt things more than anything. And so we look primarily for how they'll fit in with the group, basically. We also do we'll take friends. If we meet somebody crazy in one island and, a backpacker or something. And
Hey, you want to come with us?
I want to get to the next island. Like, all right, dude, come on. You can sleep right there. Let's go. That's a lot of fun. I love having people on the boats. I love seeing how people get entranced by learning to sail and the sailing lifestyle. And, when somebody first learns something about, oh, well, that's why you pull on that sheet to trim the sail that way, and then the boat goes faster. And the look in their eyes, it's like, oh, that's something I really like.
That's cool. It's just another rewarding element of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Is that aspect
Yeah, absolutely.
too. So many things around it. If you're leaving Sweden, and I mean, I got 2 kids. I don't know if I could sneak away, but if you think I might be a fit for the crew, just putting it out there,
I'll put you in the next pirate competition we have. And have you submit a video.
What are the longest stretches you guys have done?
I think the longest miles-wise was from Puerto Vallarta in Mexico to Kivaoa in the Marquesas. That was 21 days.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah. I mean,
pretty long period of time.
It's there's 3 of us on board though. So we got adjusted you always get adjusted to the schedule. It's really tough for the first 3 or 4 days for everybody, because you're getting used to the motion of the boat. You're getting used to a different sleep cycle, different pattern, watch schedules. But then after that, you really get into the groove. And, it's very rare that we end a sail and are happy that it was over. Usually everybody on board is like, oh man, I could use another few days or another week or something out here. But our average sail is probably 10 to 15 days.
In my very, very, very short experience of a couple hours on the Oslo Fjord, I did find that it was a very zen activity. That was kind of the thing that appealed. Do I really have to shoot a video and send it to you to apply, man? I mean, we're right here. Crying out loud. I'm kidding. All right, so people are wondering about cost, I'm sure, and this is like anything with travel, that you can be the millionaires and spend probably a lot of money, or you can be the budget traveler and be sleeping underwater, or you could be somewhere in between. I know you get this question a lot, so you must have a range that you can give people, or just a little sense of.
Yeah, you mean for like how much does a boat cost? Or
well, I mean, I guess you could say boats, and then also traveling expenses, like what you typically would spend in a month. Say.
So before we were making the videos, we took on what we called a shared expense crew. So we just meet some guy or girl who seemed pretty cool. We'd say, hey, you want to go sailing? You pay for your own food, chip in for the boat expenses. We found that to be, even averaging in cheap and expensive countries, to be 15 euros per day. So 15 euros per day would cover 3 meals a day, a few drinks, and fuel and traveling expenses, which, what is that, like $125 US a month or something like that? It's not incredibly, no, 125 US a week, I think. $600 something a month, which I don't think is that bad. Of course, the boat is another animal altogether. Delos is basically the same as a house, right? She's costs about $300,000 US. When I bought her, I didn't have enough money to buy her outright, so I got a 20-year mortgage, just like you would for a house. I put down 20% down, and off I went with my bank loan, which I then had to pay off over the next X number of years, right? There's boats out there for 30 grand. There's boats out there for 60 grand. Of course, the more expensive the boat, the more it's going to cost to maintain, the more it's going to be for insurance. So it's sort of a domino effect.
Do they hold their value?
Not really. I mean, a boat is not a good investment by any means. It's a depreciating asset. It's not like a house. Just like a new car, the second you buy it,
second you pull it off the lot,
it loses X number of percentage in value. Then it stabilizes as it's older. But there are quite a few boats out there that could be had for a reasonable amount, and I would say a reasonable amount is somewhere from 60,000 to like 140,000 or something like that.
Okay, yeah, you have to plan to get something decent. You have to plan on spending around at least like 100K, say, and up or something.
around there. I mean, my buddy Alex, who bought his boat, it was 65 grand, I think, and he just took it and went. So I mean, it depends on the size, depends on all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I mean, and you're living on it. So it's just like
Yeah.
if you were
I mean,
buying an RV and traveling, you have to.
Exactly. It's a big upfront expense, but it's
That's-
somewhere that you're going to live, right?
At some point, you have to pay the piper. With the business stuff, how do you guys manage that? I mean, do you spend enough time on shore to upload videos and everything? You said you don't have Wi-Fi on the boat. So, I mean, I know you can be doing video editing and stuff like that without Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So that's great with video. But do you just plan your work schedule around, hey, all right, we're going to be in this port or this city for X amount of time. So we're going to spend like just a week working, or we're going to work a little bit every day. How do you guys do that?
We've done it different ways. Sometimes we tend to work while we're traveling, while we're disconnected. So because we are filming and we are editing in the middle of nowhere, that's nice. We can do that for a few weeks. And then when we get into a port, the first thing we do is buy a local SIM card, upload the videos that we've edited from before. We schedule them on YouTube, and then we schedule some social media posts, and then we disappear again for another couple weeks, which is nice. We've also done it where we have actually taken longer breaks. So we'll sail constantly for like 6, 7, 8 months, and then we'll take like 3 or 4 months off, and we'll just sit there. Like we did that in Antigua this year because we were feeling like we were moving a lot, and we wanted to find some place that had a little bit of familiarity, where we knew the layout and the people. And so we moved the boat from different anchorage in Antigua. We were there for like 3 months. We were still living on the hook, as they say. But we always had internet there. We always had connectivity, and we got a lot of work done. And then we went and disappeared for a couple months after that.
Right. Yeah. And I find that the longer people stay on the road, of course, eventually there's an urge to set up shop somewhere for a little while, even if it's just for a couple months. I mean, this is circling back to kind of the beginning of the conversation. You have a child now. It changes things as much as you want it to, I suppose. But I mean, even if there's things you don't want it to, if you still want to get sleep, well, you're not going to get it when you're a crying baby. So certain things it's a change. But I'm just wondering, for you guys, what does that mean for you? Are you just not thinking about it now, processing it? Are you just going to keep kind of doing the same thing? You're going to change how you structure it? What are you guys thinking right now? And we won't hold you to this. I mean, we're talking. You're 5 weeks into being a dad, so
I'm happy to talk about it because I think it helps. It helps me sort through my thoughts as well. But the last time that we didn't sail a lot, and we took a trip off the boat, this was a little over a year ago, to visit our family. We took like 3 months off. We really missed it. And so this time we're going to, after we get back, we're going to probably say, well, if we feel like we need to stay somewhere, instead of getting off the boat, we'll just hang out wherever we are and just chill for a while and take that time as downtime to, regroup, recuperate, do work before sailing off again, which I think actually works pretty well for us. We've met a lot of families raising kids on board. They often turn out to be these extremely well-rounded, developed little humans because they're, immersed in all of this culture and this geography lessons and, the ocean being around them. And when they do, because eventually they all re-enter the educational system at one point, they often end up a few grades ahead of their peer age group. And that involves, of course, good homeschooling, but there's a lot of materials and curriculum and stuff available for that. There's whole books written on the subject, actually, about homeschooling kids on a boat. So that's kind of what we're thinking we're going to do. Might change our mind, but we're just going to go sailing as a family, take it as it comes, have no expectations, and just try and enjoy our time, enjoy our lives.
Hopefully she doesn't get seasick. But
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like for a baby to get seasick. That would be That would be
Hopefully
my
she likes
worst.
the water. Daddy, why do you live on this stupid boat all the time? I can't stand the water.
You'll have to cross that bridge when you come to it, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose.
No, I just remember when my daughter was born, just having this primal urge to protect her against all things. You know, it was just so strong.
I feel that.
Yeah, and you just like, it was almost like for a couple days, I was like, am I ever going to go anywhere or do anything again? Or am I just going to like hold her and be in my apartment? Never, you know, nothing could happen to this girl. But of course you get over that. I think it's natural for parents to want to protect their kids.
Yeah, you know, that's a good point, because Karen and I have actually been talking about in the upcoming season, there are some potentially dangerous spots.
Yeah.
It could be sketchy.
It makes you reconsider. Like, you might do those without thinking, but...
Well, and now we're thinking like, well, you know, I'm on the boat. There's villages, there's towns, there's airports. Like, if it's going to be a particularly dangerous stretch, we'll just drop you off at a spa. You can spend like 2 days there. You'll fly to the next town, and I'll sail the boat there and meet you, right? I mean...
Right. And she's probably like,
option,
yeah,
right?
now we're talking. That's great. Yeah, I mean, certainly there are solutions around that, like you said. And
but it is definitely I mean, there's definitely places that I wouldn't sail with a baby on board.
And there are ways that I've traveled in the past that I wouldn't be traveling with my kids right now.
Yeah, it's one thing to assume risk on behalf of yourself, but I think another thing to put somebody who's, you know, pure innocence under a risk they necessarily haven't signed up for themselves.
That's it. What are you most proud of?
Wow. Excellent question. At the moment, my daughter.
Yeah, I was going to say besides that, because I know that's a big thing.
You know, I'm proud that we've been able to do this project the way that we've wanted to, without bowing down to a lot of the normal corporate pressures that would come along with that. We've been able to fund it via crowdfunding by the people who watch the videos. And so we've actually been approached by a few networks that say, oh man, like, I'd love to turn your YouTube videos into a network show, you know, for Travel Channel or Discovery or, you know, wherever. And you start that, okay, that sounds interesting. Like, it could be a cool project to work on. And then the next kind of conversation goes something like, but, you know, what we'd really like to emphasize is the foodie and the travel concept. And we want to tone down the sailing. You know, you'll still get there by sailboat and it'll be very cool, but, you know, you're going to go into these villages and we're going to film you like tasting. We're going to have all these restaurant tours set up. And I'm like, you know what, man, that doesn't sound interesting at all to me. And luckily we've been able to manage to find a way to do the project without having to change what we want to do and still make a living. So that's definitely what I'm very proud of.
Good for you guys to stand with your values around that, because a lot of travelers would jump at the chance to, you know, host a travel show on the Travel Channel or something.
Right,
like that.
It's a great thing, but, you know, I think I didn't start sailing for the money.
Right.
If I was in it for the money, I would have stayed in software development, because there's a lot more money in software development than sailing around the world, right? So to me, it's about preserving a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle business.
It turns out when you stay with something that you enjoy, you can find a way to make a living at it, I feel.
No, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
And that's inspiring on many levels. And everything you guys are doing is, I'm a fan. So, you know, thank you for taking the time to come on and share your story. And my last question is this: do you ever get tired of seafood?
Yes. There are some times when I crave a cheeseburger like you wouldn't imagine, or even a tomato or a freaking avocado. You know what it's like to go without an avocado for like 3 or 4 months? It's terrible.
Yeah, it's like you get into port and you're like, give me the cheeseburger with avocado.
Just give me just take the tomato and just
what I want. I'm just gonna chow it down. Yeah. I appreciate your time, and congratulations once again, Brian, on
Thank
Sierra
you.
and everything you guys have going on. And let me know if you come through Norway. I'm over here, not too far from you guys. It'd be great to meet up in person at some point. We can do a part 2 on the boat.
Definitely.
Well, thanks for your time, man.
Okay.
All right,
Cheers.
take care.
Bye.
there you have it. Thanks to Brian for his time and for sharing his incredible story and all of the sailing knowledge he's accumulated over his decade plus sailing around the world. Doesn't that get you fired up to go get your sea legs? Yeah, granted, I have been very seasick at times on boats, but I like to think that you get over that. I still like to think you get over that. And I'm going to get out there and get some sailing in this year. That's one of my intentions. Like I said at the top of the show, I got a buddy who sails here, and maybe we can get out there a little more and explore. This is a very fascinating way to travel. I'm fascinated by it anyway, and I also love anything that's giving us a chance to cut down on our carbon output and be more environmentally friendly and travel in a slower way. Slow travel is such a beautiful way to travel, such a great way to see the world. It's not about how many destinations and sites you can pack in. It's about the people you meet along the way, the experiences you have, at least for me. And slow travel really suits me just fine right now. Just fine. I can slow down, travel the world, and sailing sounds like something, I don't know. I don't know if it's something I'll do or not, but I'm certainly interested in exploring it. At the very least, going on a week or two type of excursion and seeing a little more about what it's about, if I can handle sleeping on the boat, all that good stuff. So anyway, if you liked this show, if this got you geeked up, you can check out Brian's website. Once again, it's svdelos.com. That's SVDELOS.com. And they have a very popular YouTube show where you can go along on their adventures with them. They have different seasons, high quality video, awesome stuff. So check them out on YouTube as well. And you can get a feel for sailing life right from the comfort of your own home. And hey, maybe we will cross paths out there somewhere on the ocean. Who knows? Also, don't forget, you can sign up over at zerototravel.com if you don't want to miss any of the other stuff we got going on here with this lovely, beautiful worldwide community of travel junkies that you're a part of. We're here for you. And you can always shoot me a note, jason@zerototravel.com. That's my email. I read them all. Whew, what a show. What a day. What a life. Thank you so much for taking your valuable time to hang out here with me and with the rest of us that are listening here today. I'm going to leave you with, instead of a quote today, I'm going to leave you with a poem. Why not? Rock out a poem, right? This one's from Dorothy Allen. It's a poem called Sailing. Swiftly cutting through the water, falling spray on either side, coyly dipping, rising, skipping, borne along by wind and tide. Merrily my boat doth glide. Thanks again. I'll see you next time. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by zerototravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.